Bibles out and turn them to 2 Samuel chapter 9 this morning. I hope you've had a good week. Thank you. I got to thank Miss Susan this morning for putting the Holy Spirit in us. If you don't watch her for Sunday school. She'll have you crying. And got me filled up, so I'm ready to preach, Miss Susan. Thank you for that. And 2 Samuel, continuing our study. We had a good week. This week, I have a daughter who turned 15 and got a piece of paper with a picture on it that says she can drive. We'll see. And then my son Weston's birthday is today. He is upstairs, but if you see him running the place, running amok, you might grab a hold of him and tell him happy birthday. He turned 9, and so it's been a fun week in my house. And I'll say this just for the benefit of any men in the crowd. All right, we'll see you tonight at Publix in the card aisle and the flower aisle. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day. You hear Pastor Danny? He said, what? I'm glad I reminded you. So we will continue. This is sort of the second part of David and Jonathan's friendship story in the series of Slay. And it's not the intention of this series to go chapter by chapter. It's to kind of hit the roller coaster loops. We're going from the highs and lows of David's journey. And so in that, but I want to tell you in chapter 21 to 31, which we're skipping, David is on the run from Saul, and you want to go check this stuff out because it's the stuff for movies, all right? He is on the run from Saul. There's betrayal, there's suspense, there's thrills, there's drama, there's honor, there's trust. David fakes his death. He's like the first Robin Hood. He creates a band of 400 brothers that are discontented and in debt and distressed. He's in forests, he's in caves. And it is a lot of good things for you to look through in there. What we will have missed is that Saul and Jonathan both have died by the time we get to where we are today. And in 2 Samuel chapter 7, David is given the covenant from God that he would be confirmed as king. So all that's transpired, and I don't want you to miss it. Go back, read it. It is good stuff. But here we are in chapter 9. It's the second part to their oath, their story, that friendship between David and Jonathan. And there's a giant in this story that has to be slain. And that giant is called shame. Everybody say shame. You've probably heard some statements using the word. You've maybe heard some people say, oh, what a shame. Or that's a crying. Or they hung their head in. Okay? And so you hear all these types of things. Maybe it looks like this to you, right? I found some cute pictures. Shame on you. Maybe this next one it says, every time I click a Facebook ad, so much shame. Maybe this next one. Ever tripped in public? Some of y'all have felt this shame, right? You got to play it off. Well, what about this, moms? When you pull up to Little League practice and realize it was your turn to bring snack. Some moms in here. No, right? And so we all kind of understand that shame happens in life. But probably the most familiar phrase that we hear that I think and I hope to maybe prove today is wrong in some ways is shame on you. We hear this often. Shame on you. So what do we need to understand about this? What even is shame, Pastor? Well, shame is a painful feeling, this is the way the dictionary puts it, a painful feeling that comes from knowing that you or someone did wrong. Eve no sooner wiped the juices of the forbidden fruit from her lips, and her and Adam were running because of guilt and shame. And it accompanied them like a dark shadow. And all of a sudden they were feeling something they never felt before. Guilt and shame is something we can't deny because we conceived guilt and shame. And so, it has its father's eyes and its mother's smile. We can't deny shame. We birthed it. Now, there is a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says, I did something bad. And shame says, I am something bad. And so I want you to understand the difference there. I am a bad person. Shame can have a deep and dark side. And I want to tread lightly here this morning because I know that there's some people that are dealing with a lot of things from your past. But shame can come from anything from a lack of parental affection in your life. It can come from never measuring up to somebody else, maybe a sibling or a relative or a teammate. It can come from just an internal lack of self-worth. I look at the mirror and I'm not what I want to be. It can arise from previous past sins. That sin haunts us, that we did this thing and we've held on to it. Shame happens when a person's been harmed by a perpetrator. And what Satan endeavors to do is to leave the sin on that person that was harmed, and it was never meant to stay with them. Shame causes people to say things like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not funny enough, I am not good enough. And so I believe it's a tool from Satan this morning, and I want to show you in 2 Samuel chapter 9 how to slay shame. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your goodness to us. Lord, we thank you that you overcame every sin and darkness, everything that might penetrate into somebody's mind and overtake them, Lord, is all clean at the foot of the cross. We thank you for your grace and mercy on us. Now, Father, I pray this morning that you and your Holy Spirit would teach. Lord, teach us. And Lord, I pray that you would draw people, Lord, to repentance, draw people to restoration, draw people to change. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Point number 1 this morning is this. We see a reception to kindness in 2 Samuel chapter 9. 2 Samuel chapter 9, let's read verses 1 through 5 and see what it says here. Now David said, is there still anyone who is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake? And there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba. So when they had called him to David, the king said to him, are you Ziba? He said, at your service. Then the king said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God? And Ziba said to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet. So the king said to him, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, indeed, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Lo-debar. Then King David sent and brought him out of the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, from Lo-debar. And so we see David in these 5 scriptures asking for an opportunity to give kindness. He wants to give kindness. I've seen a plaque in a lot of people's house from Aesop. It says, every act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted. We have the power, church, every day to choose kindness. Every day, the words that we use will build or possibly break someone down. And so David is acting out of Galatians 6:10, as we said a few weeks ago, as we have therefore opportunity, do good unto all men. He's looking for an opportunity to give kindness. And then we find out and meet really one of the main characters of the text today in Mephibosheth. And we see him, and letter A is this, the condition of Mephibosheth. So let me tell you a few things about him and what's going on in Mephibosheth's life. He's first of all Saul's grandson, which if there is a new king, the new king that was running from the old king, it might not behoove you to be the grandchild of that king. And so it's not necessarily a great thing at this place and time to be Saul's grandson, right? And so Mephibosheth is grandson to Saul. Saul who threw javelins at David. Saul who made David's life a nightmare for 8 years coming after him. That same Saul, his grandson. And so that's who Mephibosheth is. And it says a word about where he's at. Mephibosheth is in Lo-debar. Lo-debar, the word debar means it's word or thing, and lo is a negator, so it means no thing or nowhere. The word debar, related closely to debar, means pasture, and so he literally, it says that he's basically nowhere, no thing, no pasture. In English, we might say here in the South, he's in the middle of nowhere, right? He's in the middle of nothing and nowhere, probably hiding out. You've probably driven in the middle of nowhere, some of you men, right? It's a place in Mississippi or Arkansas. I've seen it. And so this is where Mephibosheth is when David's looking to show kindness. I need you to go back a couple of chapters, 2 Samuel chapter 4, to unpack a little bit more about his life. 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 4 tells us some more about Mephibosheth's early life. Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who was lame in his feet. He was 5 years old when the news about Saul and Jonathan, this is talking about when Saul and Jonathan had been killed, came from Jezreel. And his nursemaid took him up and fled. And it happened as she made haste to flee when he fell and became lame. His name was Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth has been dropped as a 5-year-old. She was on the run trying to get away and dropped him, and it caused bone damage, crippling Mephibosheth. The rightful heir to the throne now has a condition, and it labeled him unfit to be king. So we see some things about his condition. Mephibosheth, maybe you don't know this, but the last part of Mephibosheth, named Sheth, you know what that means? To make matters worth breathing, shame. So Mephibosheth's condition, he's afraid, he's away, he's in hiding. It's not a good time to be grandson of the former king. And we see him, and then, letter B, what we see is the consideration of David. The consideration, back in verse 1, now David said, is there anyone who's left of the house of Saul that I may show kindness for Jonathan's sake? Is there anyone for my friend's sake? You remember that relationship, that oath that was made? Probably the saving of David's life came because of Jonathan. And I bet it stirred him up to even make this statement. Maybe choked him up to speak these words. I'm sure he thought fondly of Jonathan in this moment. He said, is there anyone, because I took an oath and I meant it, is there anyone who I can impact because God impacted me? Maybe a question we should ask today. That's good. Is there anyone out there? Heather and I, we went through some lean times, and during these lean times, we were cable-free in Connorsville. And so during this season, about 2 years, when things got a little bit better finally, right, we set up cable, and I was proud of this moment, right? But I hadn't watched TV for about 2 years, okay? And so I sat down one night, and I turned on the TV, and I had never heard of the television show Extreme Home Makeover. So I turn on Extreme Home Makeover, and we kind of get settled in, and we're watching this story unfold. I didn't know about Ty Pennington. I didn't know about what these people do. But they had this family on the show, and they start unfolding this guy's story. And I'm telling y'all, it had me. You've been in a moment, I'm in, and they start telling this story. And the kid was born with no eyes, and he had the inability to extend his arms and his legs, so he was wheelchair bound. And they begin into this story, and I'm like, what a concept. These people, whether it was ABC, NBC, Extreme Home Makeover, they're going to front the money to help change these people's lives. And it had me. I'm watching it, and I'm like, this is amazing. And so I'm watching what's happening. They're changing the home and talking about, and so I'm sitting there again, 2 years, no TV, and this is the first thing I turn on. And I just kind of glance over at the other sofa just to see what's going on with Heather over there. And she's over there looking strong. I'm holding back, fighting off tears, right? But I look over, she's looking strong. I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm the man of the house. So I continue on, and then they take the boy and his mother into his new bathroom. And they begin to talk about how this new bathroom was going to change their life because the mom had acquired so much back strain bathing this boy. And they begin to cry looking at a simple thing like a shower. And when they begin to cry, I'm trying my best, folks. I'm trying to hold it, and I'm like, and I look over at Heather. She's still looking strong, looking firm. And so I'm like, I got to hold it back. And I bellowed. It came out. I said, ooh! I bellowed at the kindness, that was shown. I couldn't believe this type of kindness took me, folks. And so I thought about this moment, and I thought about some questions for you and me. Maybe we need to ask, who can I give my time to? Ask. There is somebody that needs your kindness, and part of it's just your time. Who can I teach? Who is out there that I can teach something with my time, with your talent? Who can I help financially? Who can I help? I want church to be so close to God that I don't blink when an opportunity for kindness shows its way in my life. I don't want to, look, this week something came up, and I wasn't glad that it came up, but I was glad that I could help. Garrett contacted me, somebody's house burnt down, and I was like, yes, I have a bag that for some reason hadn't made it to Goodwill with large men's clothes. I felt so happy that I could help in this scenario. Tracy, y'all meet with Tracy? Somebody else's house burnt down just yesterday. Somebody is in need of some things. And so, listen, when an opportunity arises, won't we just be ready with an act of kindness? I don't want to blink at that. Now listen, here's something of note. 8 years has passed since Jonathan and David's oath, right? David has been deceived, aggravated. He's been in anguish by Saul. In between all of this, if anyone had a reason to come up against the king's family, it would have been David. But you know what David does? He chooses kindness. He says, I'm going to act in kindness. And I thought about some scriptures that I want you to hear this morning about kindness. These would be good for you to write down, just to keep on you. This one, man, I'm trying to memorize this week, but Proverbs 19:17 says, he who is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and God will repay. Galatians 5:22 says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, and kindness. Long-suffering and kindness. And so it's a fruit. It should be coming out of every Christian. Romans 12:10 says, be kindly affectioned to one another, giving preference to one another. That means they get a spot before you. They will eat before you. You do for them before you do for you. Preference to others. That is a sign of Christianity in our community. In Acts 20:35, it says, support the weak. Is the preference to what we always hear. We always hear it's better to give than to receive. But before it says supporting the weak. Those that are lesser or have less, it says support them. It's a blessing to be able to give. And I think David was getting that. This consideration that he gave. Well, that takes us to point number 2 this morning. A recognition of the king. And so David looks for and finds Mephibosheth. And then we see this meeting where there's a recognition of David's place. Look at what it says in verse 6 and verse 8. Now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. Then David said, Mephibosheth, look down at verse 8. Then he bowed himself and said, what is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I try to think of like the most prestigious people I've ever met. The most important or most popular people that I've ever met. And I want you to understand, I couldn't come up with a lot. I haven't met a president. I haven't met a king. I have met Mayor Picklesheimer. I've met Mayor Riggins. I know people on Westover's city council, okay? Y'all, if you need to get a meeting with me. I do. I know them. I know some of them even kind of personally. But Heather and I was on our honeymoon, and we went to Cracker Barrel, and I was sitting across. What? It's a real nice place. Y'all haven't been there? we went on a cruise after that, but listen, I'm not that cheap. So we were sitting in Cracker Barrel, and I suddenly was starstruck because across from us, I'm telling y'all, was Joseph Michael Laurinaitis. Maybe y'all don't know who that is. That's Road Warrior Animal from the WWF. Right there on the bottom. Y'all need to watch TV, evidently. But Heather was like, maybe you should say something to him. And I was like, no, I couldn't. I wouldn't. I couldn't do that. I couldn't go speak. I'm like, no, I couldn't do that. But I was serious. I was like starstruck. I was like, I can't believe this. This, other than getting married in this honeymoon, next best day of my life. And so, salvation also, yes. And so, y'all be judging me. I remember one time I went to court, and it was bad. I've been trying to tell Callie, who's learning. I got a speeding ticket for 97 and a 55. Please don't clap. So, don't clap. Don't teach my daughter. So, anyhow, but I'm waiting before the judge. And at just barely 16, I am so nervous. And I'm standing there, and a guy before me, he's a wreck too, which I was kind of like happy. He's a wreck. I feel better about myself. But he's in there, and he got up to speak to the judge, and the judge said, do you have anything to say for yourself? He said, first of all, Your Majesty. And the judge said, your honor will be just fine. And I thought, I think I'll do better than this guy. And so, but David, or Mephibosheth, is before David, the king of his known world in this moment. And don't miss this. He throws himself to his face. Letter A is this morning, humility before hierarchy. Humility. Israel wanted and pined for in front of Samuel for an earthly king. They had God to follow, remember. They had judges that were set up, but they pined for an earthly king. And Samuel, we don't have time to go back, but in 1 Samuel chapter 8, you can look at it. Samuel told them what that would mean if they were to have a king. Let me tell you some of the things it would mean. If you have a king, it's in 1 Samuel 8:11. If you have a king that's going to reign over you, he will appoint your sons to his chariots and horsemen. Some of your sons will plow for him, some will reap for him his harvest. He will take your daughters, and they will be perfumers, cooks, and bakers. He will take of your best fields, of your vineyards, of your orchards. He will take 1/10 of your grain, 1/10 of your sheep, the best of your young men, and your donkeys. And they said, we want a king like the rest of the world. And so that's what they got. I want you to understand, scripturally, God calls us to look to our authority. Romans 13, verse 1 says, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities. Hebrews says, submit to those who have the rule over you, okay? And so, understand if we have to have a king, there are rules about having a king. Ecclesiastes 10:20 says, listen to this. We all need to hear this. Even in your thoughts, do not curse the king. My. Saul started out good as a king, but he lost his focus, remember? He got distracted by the song that was being sung. He became jealous of David for his conquest. But that didn't make him any less king. He was still king. And so David refused when opportunity came his way to kill this king that was after him. 2 times in the cave, he had an opportunity to take his life, and he said, my hand will not be against you. Why? Because he recognized the position of authority. You know, Scripture even says about taxes. We don't like this. But Jesus said, render to Caesar that which is Caesar's. Now, not a penny more, church. Don't give him 1 more cent. But Mephibosheth fell on his face because of the leadership that was before him. He showed humility, right? So practically speaking for us, Scripture's saying something like this. Let's not get too big for our britches. God desires that we be humble with those that are above us, that are leadership above us. We can take instruction. We can. I have had students over the years who have said things to me when wanting jobs. They've said things like, I don't ever want to work in no place with fast food. And I'm like, what? What do you mean you don't want to work with fast food? You work with the problem is you don't want money. That's your problem. You're entitled to something. You must not want money. I'll tell you this, I have learned in life, I have been without and I have been with. With was always better. You don't want to work. But this is what it was. I'm above all that. I don't want to get my hands dirty. You better work. And so humility before hierarchy. Well, that takes us to letter B. I want you again look at verse 8. He said, why would you even look at a dead dog like me? Mephibosheth probably felt, surely this man of great power has come to require my life. Mephibosheth wasn't thinking kindness was coming his way. He thought, he's coming for my life. And he throws himself on his face. Maybe worse. Maybe he's going to imprison me. Maybe he's going to torture me. I am nothing and have nothing to offer. And so as he laid prostrate, I want you to hear me, church, those who have dealt with shame in your past. He laid prostrate on the floor, and in his shame, maybe in his greatest moment of vulnerability, former names started coming back into his mind as he laid there on the ground. And he heard those words, cripple, unfit to be king, man of shame, worthless. And he expected disdain to come out of the voice of David. Voices of outcast, dead dog, you're nothing, you're no good, you're never going to amount. Maybe came into his mind and he heard and felt a life worth of condemnation. He probably heard the phrase, shame on you. Have you ever felt the weight of such condemnation, church? It hurts. Maybe you're here this morning and somebody in your life has had some power over you to inflict this kind of hurt, and I want you to know you can't keep holding that shame. As he's laying there, I wonder if Mephibosheth even dared to raise his head. I feel that he probably ever so slightly might have looked. Maybe not at all. But he says, why would your servant look at such a dead dog as I? I'm disgraced. I'm discredited. My past has made me disqualified. Listen, church, a preacher hasn't preached until he's been heard. Are you hearing this? Shame is all through the Bible. There's all kinds of people that deal with different types of shame in the Bible. How about in the New Testament? Here's a woman that comes walking. 5 failed marriages are on her mind. She stops and comes to draw at a well. The sun is blazing, so she hopes to draw alone, away from comments, whispers, and looks. She felt shame. How about a lady that went for 12 years with an issue of blood everywhere, always unclean, uncomfortable, uncomforted, whispers, shame, condemning. She wouldn't dare ask Jesus publicly to heal her. Why do you think that is? All she thought is, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, I know I'll be healed. I don't want to be seen. Just got to touch a thread. Why would she feel such a way? The same word that Mephibosheth that's used about him laying prostrate is used in Luke 5, verse 12. It says, it happened when he was in a certain city that, behold, a man was full of leprosy. He saw Jesus Christ, and let me tell you what he was implored to say. It says he fell on his face and said, Lord, if you are willing, then I can become clean. And Jesus said to him, I am willing. And you know what? He didn't have to, but he touched him. And he was made clean. That's good, Rick. You understand leprosy? You know what society said to a leper? They said, shame, shame, you get out. You are outcast. You are not allowed back in the colony. You got to go make your own. You got to get out. And if they walked down the road, you know what a leper had to say? Unclean, unclean. They had to let it be known that they were coming with their contagion. A disgrace. They were full of shame. Outcast and marginalized. You know, the disciples have a discussion. Why was a man born blind? And this is what they thought. Why this man was born blind? Was it because of his sin? Or was it his parents' sin? It obviously was because of sin that someone had to be born blind. There's no other reason than somebody did something disgraceful. And this is the turn of events. And so, shame, shame, shame. Mephibosheth absolutely disgraced and down, probably feeling at his last rope. Knew in his mind, I'm but a moment from death. And he said, why have you come to see your servant? And oh, the words he would hear. The words he would hear. It takes us to part number 3 this morning. The tables literally were turned. And we'll see point number 3, a restoration of kinship. I want you to look at verse 7 and verse 9. So when he arrived, verse 7, David says to him, do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan your father's sake, and will restore you to all the land of Saul your grandfather. And you'll eat bread at my table continually. And the king, verse 9, called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, I have given to your master's son all that belonged to Saul and to all his house. Man, an opportunity for kindness. Listen, I want you to see and not miss some of the weight of some things, though. David didn't call him a name. He called himself, I'm just a dead dog. What am I? And David doesn't call him a name. He doesn't call him crippled or outcast or anything else. There's this famous untrue statement, church. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's false. Raise your hand this morning if words have hurt you before. I thought so. Words hurt. Jokes. Man, I hate that right now. My kids are right in it in middle school, and all the time, everything's a joke. Well, it was just a joke. It was just a joke. Well, it was mean. And jokes are funny, so I don't understand why it's such a joke to call somebody something mean to be funny, because it's not funny. It's just a joke. And so it hurts. Sarcasm can hurt. Jabs hurt. Words hurt. You know, David in that moment could have said anything, but he calls him by name. You know, it's been said that the most favorite word you'll ever hear is your own name. And he says, and this is the tone though. Don't miss this. I think the tone would have sounded like brother. Mephibosheth. Oh, Mephibosheth. I think in this moment, David felt all of the love that he had for Jonathan. And he said, brother, you think you're dead? Oh, I can't even wait to tell you what I'm about to do. I am so flooded with joy about what I have to be able to be a blessing. And he says, Mephibosheth. He thought, my soul is still knit to your dad. Even at this moment, we're still knit. I've missed my friend. And he says, listen to me. I'm here to restore. I'm here to restore this relationship. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to hurt you or harm you. I'm here to restore you. Every day, church, there's 24 hours set before you to love. There's 24 hours set before you to pay it forward, pay it backward, pay it to somebody in kindness. You can have random acts of kindness throughout your day. The Bible says there again, it's more blessed to give. And so if you want to be full when you hit your pillow at night, be a blessing. Mile 2, we said at the beginning of the year. Let's take that mile and restore people. Don't take an opportunity to hurt and jab, kick someone when they're down. You know, just being right, man, that could solve a lot if we just fought the urge to say, you know, I was right. I told you this is the way it was going to be. When has that ever helped? Has ever, I knew you were going to be right. You're right. I knew it. I'm such an idiot. And you're right. Our words, church, our words. Look at verse 9. He said, I'm here and I'm going to give you all of Saul's belongings, everything that was his. And this is letter A, what it was. It was a treaty being satisfied. Jonathan, remember, took off all of his gear, all of his armor, everything, gave it to David. He made a prince out of a pauper. He went to his friend and he said, I'm going to give you all that I have so that you can be protected. I will do anything for you. And there was a love between them in their friendship. And David says, I loved your father and I want to restore you. I want to bring you back to your place. You were the rightful son of a prince. I bet in this moment Mephibosheth possibly unable to believe the words he has heard. And so we saw in verse 7, David said, I'm here to restore you. Or verse 6, but in verse 7, we see all his words. And then verse 8, still Mephibosheth, that's when he says, I'm just a dead dog. Why would you look down on me? I cannot believe this. He was still feeling shame. And David reinforces, I'm here to restore. It's not in the text here, but you know, David liked to write some words. And I wonder if this went through his head or if maybe we're not privy to it, but maybe David said something like this. I write some songs, and I see that you're not understanding what I'm saying, Mephibosheth, and I want to help you. And maybe he said, there's this psalm. It's the 23rd one that I wrote. This is how it goes. The Lord is my shepherd, Mephibosheth, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. You're lying down in no pasture nowhere, but he makes me to lie down where it flourishes. God supplies my green pastures. You know, Mephibosheth, you've been through a lot. He leads me by still waters. I know you've been ashamed and you've been scared. And I know that the enemy has said, you don't matter. But my God, Mephibosheth, restores. It says that in my psalm, that he restores my soul. My cup runs over. I want your cup to run over too. He came to restore. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. You know what else he does? He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemy. That takes us to letter B. Verse 9 says, he invited Mephibosheth to sit at the table of the king continually. That's what it says. I have given to your master's sons all that's belong. Verse 10, you therefore and your sons and your servants shall work the land. But Mephibosheth, your master's son, you shall eat bread at my table always. Yeah. Talk about an offer. This picture right here gets me excited. David is like, because my God is a shepherd, it doesn't eliminate my enemies. I'm not telling you you're going to have an enemy-free life or you're going to have a reality-free life. But what I'm telling you about your table, I'm offering you a seat at the king's table. And when I look at that psalm, he says, I'm setting a table in the presence of your enemies. So you're going to have enemies in life, church. But if you follow God, he's saying you can be relaxed. You can have a spread of food right there with the enemies on the outskirts of your table. You can sit back knowing I am God, I am king, and you can be like seated by still waters. You're going to have enemies. God wants to spread a feast of provision in the very presence of your enemy. He wants to feed you in the presence of your enemy. And so I want you that are here this morning to hear a word about shame. There's some people here. If I said, are you dealing with something? Have you dealt with something for a long time? Is there something in your past? Is there something deep? Is there something that hurts? There'd probably be a lot of hands that would go up. And I want you to hear something. If you're a Christian today, Romans chapter 8, verse 1 says this for you and for me. It says, now there is therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. There's no more condemnation. If you're a Christian, the enemy doesn't get a seat at your table. He doesn't get to be seated at your feast. So don't give him a seat. Don't pull up a chair for the enemy when he says, you know what, you're no good. when he says, you're not smart enough. You're not what they said you should be. When he starts whispering his stuff, you say, you're not at my table. I'm going to feast, but you got to stay out there. And he says, you're not good enough. Because here's what happens. If you let the enemy sit at your table, you're going to think that there are other tables out there that are better. He's going to whisper things about other things in your life. It doesn't say that your past will be gone, but your shame doesn't have to have a seat at the table. It doesn't have a table setting with the Christian. There is no more condemnation. David told him, you're going to have a seat with my 19 other sons. Mephibosheth. I wish you could picture this table and the feast at the king's table. And all of David's, there were beautiful sons. There's one particular, Absalom's talked about his beautiful long flowing hair, and then he walked down the thing. And there's Mephibosheth sitting at the table of all of the grandeur. He has a place at the table. And church, so do you. So do I. We all have a seat at the table if we know him. We don't have to listen to Satan's stuff. We have a seat at the table. Why would David take the time and add this strain to his own life? You know what sounds like not a good thing for a new king, not a pleasant thing? Probably the former king's crippled son. That doesn't sound like the first thing you would take up. And there's only one reason I could conjure that David would do something like this, and I don't want you to miss this. Church, you and I are Mephibosheths. God took the dead dog. He took the outcast. He took the crippled. And Romans 5:8, you know what? He didn't take me because I got good. It says he commended his love toward me that while I was yet a sinner, that's why when he died for me, it wasn't because of my goodness or my amazing talents or my compelling charm. He took me as a Mephibosheth. My place and your place at the king's table will serve as a constant reminder of how God takes a person that others might have abandoned and he wipes away their shame. Before we came into a relationship with Jesus, you know what we spend our life doing? We're looking for Lodabar. We're trying to distance ourselves. We get nothing. We go nowhere. We're empty. And we're just seated in our brokenness and shame. And when we finally laid trembling at his feet, he touched us. And you know what he said? I'm about to give you an inheritance. It's even bigger than you can understand. I'm taking you, Mephibosheth, and I'm going to give you a heavenly inheritance. But even more than that right now, listen to me, hear me. Somebody here today, you need this. He says, I want you. I want you. Right here, right now, I want you and your life, and I can use it. I can fill you with purpose. I can give you passion. I can give you a meaning. I want you. For people that have never heard that I want you, he says, I want you. And maybe you've struggled your whole life not feeling wanted or not feeling enough. The creator of all things says, I want you. The one whose name is most high and holy says, child, I want you in my family at my table. I will adopt you right now. In fact, the papers are already signed and the blood has sealed it. It's paid for. The adoption process is ready. Come, sit at my table. It'll get you away from all this shame. I've signed the contract in my blood. It has been sealed. You know what it says in Romans? Come to me, all ye that are weak and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. Amen.